Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Good day to all. I am Sunny Coloma and I am happy to join you today in conversation as part of the Aral at Asal 100 lectures. Our topic is Laudato Si, caring for Mother Earth. I will talk first about a very unforgettable experience that I had in Tacloban. Then, I will talk about the papal encyclical Laudato Si, which was followed by the apostolic letter Laudate Deum, both of which foreshadow and embody the pathfinding message of Pope Francis to COP28, the latest summit on climate change and sustainable environment that has just been concluded in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Finally, I would like to share with you how one institution, namely the Don Bosco School of Theology, where I serve as trustee, has developed and is now actively implementing an action platform that puts into concrete expression how we could follow and emulate the principles of Laudato Si, caring for Mother Earth. Let me take you back to the morning of January 17 and 2015. I was then serving as Communications Secretary in the administration of President Benigno Noynoy Aquino III, and I was asked to accompany the Executive Secretary to Tacloban City on day 3 of the Pope's visit that was themed Mercy and Compassion. I cannot forget that day. It was raining very hard, and yet we were able to travel and land in the Tacloban Airport. When we were approaching the airport, we could see a sea of yellow raincoats, thousands of people who we were told braved an entire night of standing there to be able to have a place in front of the stage at which Pope Francis was going to celebrate Mass. And Pope Francis delivered to them this message. So many of you have lost everything, he said. I don't know what to say to you, but the Lord does know what to say to you. Some of you lost part of your families. All I can do is keep silent. And I walk with you all with my silent heart. Indeed, a very touching message of mercy and compassion. It turns out that Pope Francis willed to be in Manila in January 2015, as he had witnessed how in November 2013, Typhoon Haiyan or Typhoon Yolanda brought on massive destruction at the cost of more than 6,000 lives and widespread damage to property across Tacloban, Leyte, Samar, Cebu, and the Visayas, up to Palawan and Luzon. And so Pope Francis, as the leader of the faithful, wanted to be with his flock and wanted to feel their pain. And this is what inspired him to issue on Pentecost Day, May 24, 2015, Laudato Si, an encyclical on caring for Mother Earth. We know that he chose the name Francis after Saint Francis of Assisi, who said, "Our common home, the earth, is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us." And so the prayer of Saint Francis goes, and this is quoted in the first line of Laudato Si. "Praise be to you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces various fruit with colored flowers and herbs." Laudato Si has a very important message, and it is this: environmental damage is sinful, morally wrong, unethical. And Pope Francis said this while quoting from Romans. "The violence present in our hearts, wounded by sin, is also reflected in the symptoms of sickness evident in the soil, in the water, in the air, and in all forms of life. This is why the earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. She groans in travail." Notice the similarity that Pope Francis drew between the earth and the poor. We must realize that the earth has been treated in a grossly wrong way, in the same way that we have the poor in our midst. Before him, Pope Paul VI, now Blessed Pope Paul VI, reminded us of the tragic consequence of unchecked human activity. And he said, "Due to an ill-considered exploitation of nature, humanity runs the risk of destroying it and becoming in turn a victim of this degradation." His successor, Pope John Paul, now Saint John Paul II, said, "Human beings frequently seem to see no other meaning in their natural environment than what serves for immediate use and consumption." And so Pope Francis said in his message to the Conference of Parties 28, COP28 in Dubai. And this is a very pointed statement. Environment destruction is an offense against God. He said, and I quote, "The destruction of the environment is an offense against God, a sin that is not only personal, but also structural, one that greatly endangers all human beings, especially the most vulnerable in our midst, and threatens to unleash a conflict between generations." He had 5 key messages to COP28. First, denounce evil, conflict, and death. Second, uphold life. Third, strike at the roots of ecological debt. Fourth, rebuild through multilateralism. Fifth, forgive and unite. He clearly said, let us choose life. Let us choose the future. May we be attentive to the cry of the earth. May we hear the plea of the poor. May we be sensitive to the hopes of the young and the dreams of children. He also criticized big business. We now often hear the term ESG, environment, social, governance. This is the latter-day version of corporate social responsibility. And Pope Francis said this to COP28. We find ourselves facing firm and even inflexible positions to protect income and business interests, at times justifying this on the basis of what was done in the past and periodically shifting the responsibility to others. And he said further, these are falsities that must be firmly dispelled. It is not the fault of the poor, since the almost half of the world that is more needy is responsible for scarcely 10% of toxic emissions, while the gap between the opulent few and the masses of the poor has never been so abysmal. The poor are the real victims of what is happening. And then he talked about the concept of ecological debt. And he said, as a means of redress, it would only be fair to find suitable means of remitting the financial burden, the debts that burden different peoples, not least in the light of the ecological debt that they are owed. This is the context for the proposal to establish a loss and damage fund for climate vulnerable countries like the Philippines, as we shall discuss in a little while. At the crux of this discussion is the production of greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide, by the developed nations of the North. There is a glaring contrast here. The developed nations of the North producing greenhouse gases with massive industrialization, and the poor in the South that are impoverished even more because of the resources that have been destroyed, that have been extracted from their earth, which now translates into billions of international debt. And so one of the important resolutions of COP28 was a commitment to transition away from fossil fuels that produce greenhouse gases. What is important to see here, as Pope Francis suggests, is that we all realize the interrelated nature of ecology, ecosystems, ecological debt, and how this affects people, and how now, as we speak, every person on earth is heavily indebted through the collective and individual behaviors that affect the environment. Let's focus now on the global fund that we talked about earlier. How much energy is humanity wasting on the numerous wars presently in Israel and Palestine, in Ukraine and other parts of the world? In juxtaposition, we have the continuing destruction of the environment, where we are now facing global hunger being suffered by those who contribute most of the natural resources for industrial development. We are now commonly challenged to meet the dangers posed by climate change. 4 breakthrough sectors were identified by Pope Francis: energy efficiency, renewable sources, elimination of fossil fuels, and education in lifestyles that are less dependent on fossil fuels. Climate finance effectiveness has far to go beyond a delivery plan for the 100 billion of annual balanced climate finance. By the way, this has been discussed since COP or COP21 in Paris in 2015 or 8 years ago. This is a long delayed and urgently needed assistance to countries like the Philippines that suffer from catastrophic losses, as exemplified by Typhoon Yolanda or Typhoon Haiyan. It's about time that a loss and damage fund be established. My final discussion is how to put into action the principles of Laudato Si. And I would like to share with you the action platforms of the Don Bosco School of Theology where I serve as a trustee. These are the following. 1. Adoption of simple lifestyles. 2. Ecological economics. 3. Response to the cry of the poor. 4. Response to the cry of the earth. 5. Community engagement and participatory action. 6. Ecological education. And 7. Ecological spirituality. These action programs have been synthesized into a 10-week Laudato Si certified environmental trainer course that has 3 components: a theology component, an ecology component, and a technology component. Let us take a look at what the topics are being discussed in this course. In the theology component, the first 2 weeks focus on the world and the Word. Weeks 3 and 4 on the origin of the universe or cosmogenesis. Weeks 5 and 6, the movement from homogenesis or the beginning of humanity to Christogenesis, humanity's journey towards Christ. Week 7 and 8 is on the ethics of ecology. And weeks 9 and 10 on living Laudato Si. The ecology component consists of the following: climate change on weeks 1 and 2, recycling and material sustainability on weeks 3 and 4, marine biodiversity on weeks 5 and 6, environment and the law, weeks 7 and 8, social development and ecology, weeks 9 and 10. The technology component is very useful, especially to the community-based participants in the Certified Environmental Trainer course. Applications of biochar or the use of charcoal on weeks 1 and 2. Materials recovery, classification, and composting in weeks 3 and 4. Marine and coastal conservation on weeks 5 and 6. Hydroponics and vertical farming on weeks 7 and 8. And solar lighting the margins, weeks 9 and 10. This last topic is about providing affordable power to those who could not afford electricity. We are all inspired by Pope Francis' call in Laudato Si. We are all inspired to take up the responsibility of preserving, saving, and sustaining planet Earth. And we look at all this with a robust hope for the future. Hope that becomes fulfilled reality if we do our part in caring for Mother Earth. Let us listen once more to the inspiring words of Pope Francis. Let us reflect on our personal responsibility to build and sustain an earth that will fulfill God's will for humanity. And this is the message of Pope Francis. Let us leave behind our divisions and unite our forces. And with God's help, let us emerge from the dark night of wars and environmental devastation in order to turn our common future into the dawn of a new and radiant day. Laudato si, praise be to the Lord. Let us all care for our Mother Earth.